right, everybody. So I'm going to go through the week 7 stuff here. So if you look over here, it seems like there's a lot, and it is quite a few assignments, but each one individually isn't that lengthy. So if you go here into week 7, I'm going to work from the top down. So this here, Slaughterhouse 5 character comparison, this is probably going to be the last thing we do with Slaughterhouse. Ideally, I would have liked to do a little bit more, but with the weather that we've had and the power outages, and Mr. Davis not pushing back the deadline for this quarter, we're kind of smushed. So I want to make sure we can get through some other stuff, so I don't want to overwork Slaughterhouse here. But anyway, if you click on this character comparison, it's going to open this Google Doc here. Actually, that's a lie. It's going to open up this assignment, and then if you click on this, this will open up the Google Doc. So what we're going to be doing is using your knowledge from the rest of the book. So realistically, you can use things pre-chapter 5 if you want, but you can pull from the entire book for this. You're going to choose the 5 major characters here, and you're going to basically do a slide for each one where you're going to compare this character to a character from something else. So ideally, it can be another fictional work, so a TV show, a book, a comic book, or a movie. But if you want to choose real-life historical figures, athletes, or celebrities, you're welcome to do that as well. So what you're going to be doing for each slide is you're going to be providing these 4 bullets. So you need a photo or depiction of the character that you're comparing, your rationale, so why did you choose to compare Billy Pilgrim to this other person? You're going to have to provide some primary source evidence. You're going to have to get me a quote from the novel somewhere that proves that the character from the novel has these traits, and then he therefore matches the character you're comparing with. Make sure you're giving me proper citations here. So a lot of people have been throwing in those schmoop things from the internet, so obviously those aren't citations. So in addition to being incorrect, it's also kind of a dead giveaway that you're not reading the novel and you're just doing a lot of Googling. You need some citations there. And then the last part, you're going to provide me a contrasting characteristic between your character and the person you're comparing it with. So although they should be mostly the same, there's probably going to be some differences. So where are those differences? All right. So when you're thinking, now here's some questions to kind of guide you through, and then I've done this sample slide for you. So I just did it in Google Slides. So I did a different book, obviously, because I don't want you to just steal my example here. So I did Randall McMurphy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And I chose to compare the main character, Mac, to Sawyer from Lost, who is also one of my favorite characters from any fictional show ever. So both characters are equipped with an outer shell. So they're very gruff and rough on the outside, and they use humor as a way to kind of mask a lot of their insecurities. But deep down inside, although they both kind of initially have some characteristics that would identify them as like a villain almost, or a bully, deep down inside they're both very compassionate characters. And as both the novel and the show rolls on, you get to see kind of the softer side of both of them. So I have this character, this instance in the book here where it talks about, despite being imprisoned in a mental institution, McMurphy is always singing, and he kind of has this joyous air about him, and he uses that to kind of inspire other people. So this quote there, properly cited. And then the difference here. So unlike Sawyer, though, McMurphy doesn't really have to lead the whole group. So Sawyer kind of can fall back on Jack for these leadership roles, while McMurphy is tasked with doing this all himself. So obviously I could have fleshed this out a little bit more, but you didn't read the novel, so I just wanted to give you kind of a visual. If yours bleeds onto a second slide, you might find that that works a little bit better. So you can have 2 slides per character if you want. It's not really any more work. It just presents the information a little bit more cleanly. But you're just going to submit your Google slide with your 5 characters and your comparisons. It's worth 25 points, so each one essentially is worth 5 points. And then again, that depends on how thoroughly you complete it. So that's the last Slaughterhouse thing, and that's going to be due on Thursday. Then if we go back into this folder, we're going to start our little definition essay kind of like mini unit. So I have a couple things in here. So if you go here in this definition essay examples, right now, this bottom link isn't going to be too helpful, but these links up here, so we're going to be doing exemplification, classification, negation, and then function, but we don't have an essay for function. So these are sample essays that you're welcome to look at if you'd like. But essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going to this list here. I should move up. Bloop. So you're going to be clicking on this list, and it's going to give you a whole bunch of possible abstract nouns. So you're going to pick one of these abstract nouns, and then you're stuck with this one for all 4 of these exercises. So if you pick humor, then you're committing to doing 4 little mini paragraphs about humor. So make sure you stick with it. If you're Not sure if your choice is going to be good. You might want to come by and check with me. Some of them are kind of weird, like Appearance versus Reality. I wouldn't recommend, but some of them are pretty good. So like Evil, Empathy is a good one. Humor, I think, is fun. Imagination, Independence. So a bunch of these are just abstract nouns that can be defined in many, many, many different ways. So you're going to choose one of these, and then you're going to stick with it for these 4 paragraphs. So I'm not going to go through all of these because I have samples for them that you can look at, but we'll look at the first one here. Exemplification and classification are going to be due on Thursday, and then function and negation will be due on Sunday. But if you look at the exemplification one, simply, exemplification is defining something by providing examples of it, or maybe picking a person who to you exemplifies that trait. Right? So I did here brilliance as a sample. So obviously you can't do brilliance. If you really want to, you can come pitch it to me and maybe I'll allow it, but I did that as the sample for most of them. So you're, for each one, kind of doing the same assignment here. So you're going to write me a paragraph, 5 to 7 sentences, defining your noun by presenting examples of it. And this is just for exemplification. Each one is slightly different, and you can see my samples in there. So what you're going to be doing here, I've done for you. So you pick your noun, and then I went through and I defined in my own words what I think brilliance is, right? So a willingness to approach tasks in an unconventional way. And then what exemplifies brilliance? Those who think critically and take risks to break boundaries, all right? So I think that, to me, is what defines brilliant people. And then I gave a person who, in my opinion, I think is very brilliant, and that's this dude named Ian Babbitt, who is a hip-hop artist named Aesop Rock. And there's a study conducted, which you can find on the internet if you just Google rapper with the largest vocabulary. But he was the subject of a study, and it was determined that he used a greater variance of words than basically any other hip-hop artist out there. To me, I think he is one of the more progressive artists, and I enjoy him. So I chose him, and then I explained why down here, and I've also linked a little, he wrote a song about his cat, which I think is pretty awesome too. The video is super cute. But this, to me, he exemplifies brilliance as well as people who do these things, all right? So you're going to pick a noun, you're going to kind of go through these steps, I'll give you some feedback, and then we'll go from there. If you go back into these, you're going to be doing the same thing. So if you look in classification, I've done a sample for you. So when you're doing classification, you're kind of going to zoom out. So maybe if you pick one person to you who exemplifies brilliance, you're going to put that person in some broader categories. So I used specifically a hip-hop artist, and then I backed out into all artists, but then I also kind of looped in like parents, who I think good parents have to be brilliant in a lot of ways, and you can read why here. But then you're going to put them in a category for classification. If you go back to, sorry, I have too many tabs open. If you go back to function, this one is a little bit trickier, but you're kind of personifying your abstract noun. So you're attributing some verbs to it. So I switched, I did anger for this one, just because, I don't know, it was more fun. This was right after an interesting evening where I was playing some board games with my friends, and somebody did something that was real sneaky and caused my friend to get pretty upset. So I kind of did that. So you're going to attribute some verbs to your noun. So if you had somebody and then you instilled that trait in them, what does it do to them? So here, anger, it robs people of compassion. It transforms them into heartless people. It compels them to, I also used a bunch of vocab words here, compels them to kind of bring out the dark side. I bolded my verbs, which you do not necessarily have to do. I also use like 5 different ones. Realistically, you probably only need 2, but function is a little bit trickier. And then the last one, which is my personal favorite, is negation. So here, you're not doing the opposite. A lot of people try to just do the opposite of what their noun is. So I did brilliance, and you're not just doing the opposite of brilliance, but you're kind of dispelling some common misconceptions about it. So typically, with your noun, there's probably some sort of fine line. So to be brilliant, you can't just ignore all of the basics of whatever you're doing. You still have to kind of have the bare bones of whatever the skill is, but you can kind of push those boundaries a little bit if you are brilliant. So for example, like there's a fine line between like courage and stupidity. So at some point, if you go too far, you are no longer being courageous and you are now just being kind of silly. So you need to find that boundary, and then you're going to define that using negation. So ultimately, if you have any questions about this process, come by. It's kind of tricky, and I can't really get into the nuances of all of it in this video, but you're going to do these sample paragraphs. I'll give you feedback as you go. And then next week, ultimately, what we're going to be doing is you're going to be picking a new noun that describes you. So a noun that you identify with, and you're going to be writing a definition essay about that noun using yourself as the exemplifying person. So if there is a word that you would like to use to describe yourself, do not use that word in these exercises because I'm not going to let you pick the same word. So if you think, for example, you are humorous, do not use humor because I'm not going to let you do it again. I'm going to make you pick a new word. So for this part, though, use this list, practice with all 4 of these, and then we will go from there. Also, vocab's due on Sunday. Stop by if you have any questions. Bye. Good luck.